Lady Garden holders, here we are on the verge of the Long Awaited Vagina Podcast. I know that you have all been itching to get in and learn about what the heck our vagina really is. First, though, I want to play you a little song that crossed my inbox a couple of days ago, and I could not share it with you all. It has honestly become the theme song here at Pussy HQ. Isn't it freaking awesome? Anyhow, ladies, lesson 103, Lady Garden Horticulture, the vagina. I don't think she needs any other introduction. We all know what one is, but do we know what she does, how she functions, and what her anatomy is made up of? Vaginas and their bits, the genitourinary system, what the fuck? Why we birth babies more than once, and some more ranting. Plus, I will set the scene on why we are so disconnected from our lady gardens and touch on some pretty shitty messaging from the past. Ladies, let's start our vagina journey with Sigmund Freud. Freaking Freud, you ask? What the F has he got to do with vaginas? Well, you know the whole faking an orgasm thing? We have Freud to thank for that. And for those of you who don't know who Freud is, and he, being the operative word here, was a famous Austrian neurologist and the founder of psychoanalysis. Freud may justly be called the most influential intellectual legislator of his age. But was he? Or was he just an opinionated little man? I know I'm upsetting a few psychologists here right now, but what I'm going to tell you is freaking crazy. In the early 1900s, Freud decided to have an opinion on the female orgasm, and he declared that a clitoral orgasm was infantile, immature. A woman could only claim sexual maturity when she experienced a vaginal orgasm. A woman must ignore her amputated penis, being the clitoris, and if they were unable to achieve this vaginal orgasm, it meant that she was frigid and not a real woman. Ladies, we were told that if we didn't have a vaginal orgasm, we were emotionally unstable with immature defense mechanisms and low emotional intelligence. The pressure was on to be normal and mature. We had to have vaginal orgasms. And what this led to was successive generations being diagnosed with sexual dysfunction when they failed to achieve this holy grail of sexual response. We felt like failures. Apparently, our bodies were letting us down. Well, according to Freud. And unsurprisingly, faking an orgasm was born. It soon became the norm, as nobody wanted their partners to think that they were failing to be a real woman, right? We even started having surgeries to move our clitoris closer to our vaginas because Freud said we were deficient for not orgasming during vaginal penetration. What the actual fuck? His own wife had this surgery 3 times on her clitoris, as it was more than 2.5 centimeters from her vagina, and he wanted it to be 1 centimeter or closer. This is freaking bonkers. Clearly, this man was having some issues in the bedroom with his wife, and it was much easier to blame her than look at his own inadequacies. And we cut our vulvas because a man said so. I've got a little song here dedicated to Freud. Friends, I want to see you get up. He's not pretty. We see. And find things again. And speciousness. I know, where am I finding these freaking songs? Aren't they fantastic? But moving on, there are so many nerves that run in a multitude of different directions in a woman's vulva. Women are uniquely different down there, like a fingerprint, and that's normal. Men, their nerves are pretty one-directional, and that's not a bad thing either. But we are different, ladies, and our clitoris isn't a broken penis. Oh, Freud, you really did fuck it for women for a good 100 years plus. He died in 1939, and this garbage is still present in our society today. Could you imagine if someone came out with these findings in the present time? My gosh, wouldn't that be a social media shit show? It'd be freaking brilliant. But as funny as this may be, these messages are still deep down etched in our society today. The messaging from the past has been handed down generation to generation. Men have been informing women for years that they don't work properly, their vaginas are broken, their bodies are not normal, and their sexuality is that of the male opinion. They have been shaming and dictating how our bodies function for centuries. And this forms part of our society and part of our medical system today. And look, when I'm preaching about men, it's not that I'm suggesting every man has a vendetta towards women, nor do I have a vendetta against the modern man or men in general. It's just that medicine has left women behind. Medicine was created years ago by men for men. Plus, let's face it, I'm a disgruntled perimenopausal lady in her 40s, pissed off that the study of women's health is about 100 years behind that of men. And I believe this is one of the contributing factors to our complete and utter disassociation and lack of understanding of our own vaginas, what she does and what she is made up of. I mean, men have been trying to work her out for centuries, but they just forgot to include us in the process. Go figure. What do we really mean when we are referring or talking about our vaginas? Well, a majority of us are probably referring to our vulvas, including myself, not our vaginas at all. And this is how truly discombobulated we are with our own anatomy. We are going to start from the beginning, ladies. And if you know me, if you've had a coffee with me, been to the gym with me, basically spent any time with me, girlfriends, remember the flap story? Oh my God, wasn't that the best dinner conversation ever? We are going to be deep diving into my favorite topic, vaginas. The vajayjay, the hoo-ha, the fluffy, the lady garden, the peach, the flower, the honey pot, the cupcake, the kitty, the muff, the pink palace, the taco, the fenny, the fufu, the coochie, the beaver, the volt, the pussy. I don't think a man's penis has as many nicknames. No wonder we're so freaking confused. We don't even know what to call her. Firstly, did we know that the vagina is just the internal canal? It isn't even a representation of the whole thing. So maybe pussy, vajayjay, lady garden are a better representation, anatomically speaking. Now let me introduce you to the vulva. I remember watching a Seinfeld episode. Yep, I'm that old. It wasn't even a rerun. And Jerry couldn't remember the name of a lady that he was dating. And he couldn't ask her, considering the number of dates they had been on. He tells her that people made fun of his name in school and asks if kids ever made fun of her name. She replies, of course they did. My name rhymes with the part of the female anatomy. George and Jerry guessed mulva to rhyme with vulva. He calls her this. She storms out of the apartment. Moments later, after she leaves, he realizes it's Dolores, rhyming with the common pronunciation of clitoris. He runs to the window and yells, Dolores! And I know, why the fuck are you telling us a Seinfeld story? We're supposed to be talking about vaginas. Well, I remember thinking to myself when watching this episode, what the F is the vulva? And don't forget, I didn't have internet or internet phones back then. It was 1993. Women were only just being included in medical studies. The internet was only just now becoming available. And I surely wasn't going to be asking my parents. So I went on with my merry life, not knowing what the vulva was. I figured it must have been an American term and only Americans knew what it was. Hence, we will be starting with the vulva because if any of you were like me, it's the vulva that most of us are referring to when we are talking about the vagina. Crazy, right? Who knew? Not me in my 20s. The vulva. The global term. The global, not just the American term, used to describe all of the structures that make the female external genitalia. We are talking the momus pubis, labia major, labia minor, clitoris, vestibular bulbs, vulva vestibular, Bartholin's glands, Scalene's glands, urethra, and the vaginal opening. I know what you're thinking. What the hell are all these items down there, and how the freak do I not know about it? Ladies, that's just the outside. We haven't even touched on the inside, which is not the vulva. Apparently, the word vulva was global knowledge, just not in PE classes in the 90s. This was a revelation to me. How could I have not known what one of the main parts of my female anatomy was called? Yet I had learned all about the penis in health class, the scrotum, the testicles, the shaft, the base, the foreskin, the urethra. I know there are like one or two other things, but to my point, we knew what these items were and that they made up the penis, and the penis was the penis and the testes were the testicles. And I do understand when you put the female and the male system side by side, that male shit is way more simple. And I don't want to emphasize the word simple. I'll leave that interpretation up to you. But to my point, we knew about men. But what we didn't know was the right information about ourselves. I think we were even informed that it was important for a man to ejaculate if we were to procreate. Hence, it became all about the importance of a man's ability to orgasm. Otherwise, we were not going to get pregnant. But don't get pregnant. But make sure a man ejaculates because that's really important. I don't think I've said the word ejaculate out loud so many times in a sentence in my life. However, this does beg the question, is this why for all these years, why some women are having to fake orgasms? Freaking Freud. As no one was teaching us, let alone men, we don't just have a vagina. Hello, clitoris. The vagina, though, the holy grail of the female body, is just the canal between the vaginal opening and the cervix. It's a flexible tube that connects the urethra and the vulva. It's around 3 inches long and it is the highway to our reproductive organ. That's it. And the vaginal opening is the visible part. Pretty explanatory. Look, there are a few nerves located in there. However, the clitoris has over 8,000 to 10,000 nerves, twice as many as the man's penis. Now we know that the vagina is pretty basic in terms of anatomical structure. It does, however, have its own pH level and is clearly a nifty little organ. Fun Fanny Fat Friday for everyone who's been listening to that. And if you're not, jump onto the socials, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that other stuff. But, now let's dive into everything else that makes up the vulva, the outside part. Just checking you've all been paying close attention. The momus pubis. The momus pubis is a tissue mound made up of fat located directly anterior to the pubic bone. This mound of tissue is prominent in females, clearly, and is usually covered in pubic hair. The momus pubis functions as a source of cushioning during sexual intercourse. It also contains subcutaneous glands that secrete pheromones to induce sexual attraction. I dare say it provides cushioning for a whole lot more other than sexual intercourse. I mean, I ride horses and she requires some cushioning down there. I'll leave that there. But all you riders out there, you are picking up what I am putting down. 3 words: padded bicycle shorts. We'll move to the outside flaps, the labia majora. The labia majora is defined as the larger flaps, the folds that cover the labia minora, the clitoris, the vulva, the vestibules, the vestibular bulbs, the Bartholin's glands, the skin glands, the urethra, and the vaginal opening. Then we have the labia minora. The labia minora is defined as the smaller lips and are a pair of small skin folds that begin at the clitoris and extend downwards. The anterior folds of the labia minora encircle the clitoris, forming the clitoral hood and the frenula of the clitoris. The labia majora and the labia minora engorge with blood and appear larger during sexual arousal. Moving down, we come to our first point of call, the clitoral hood, a fold of skin that surrounds and protects the head of the clitoris from friction. The clitoral hood is sort of equivalent to the foreskin of a penis, and isn't it crazy that I have to refer to the penis for a comparison and understanding of this part of our body? There is no normal when it comes to the shape, size, and colour of the clitoral hood. I mean, look, it's not going to be yellow, but what I can say is they vary from person to person. So don't let anyone tell you she doesn't look normal. As well as protecting the clitoris, the clitoral hood produces a lubricant which helps it to move slowly over the clitoris. When you are aroused, your clitoris swells, which can move the hood aside. And then, ladies, we have the clitoris. The clitoris is the sexual organ most associated with pleasure. As mentioned before, it has over 8,000 to 10,000 nerve endings, if not more, and sends messages to and from our brains. It's highly sensitive, and when we are aroused, it becomes erect, engorging with blood, and becomes swollen. Only the head of the clitoris is visible from the outside and connects to the internal structures of 2 corpora cavernosa. I mean, what the fuck is that, you ask? One of a pair of sponge-like regions of erectile tissue, and this sits beneath the skin. These masses of erectile tissue are present in both the penis and the clitoris and are responsible for getting and maintaining an erection. In a 2017 survey, the FPA found that 80% of women surveyed could not reach orgasm from penetrative sex alone. So, F off Freud is what I've got to say. Next, we have the vestibular bulbs. These are 2 bulbs which extend either side of the vaginal opening, sometimes referred to as the clitoral bulbs. They are made up of erectile tissue and are positioned on either side of the urethra and play a key role in sexual arousal and function. During sexual arousal, the vestibular bulbs become engorged with blood, which then exerts pressure onto the erectile tissue of the clitoris. Then, I know there's more, the vulvar vestibule. This is an area that is enclosed by the labia minora that contains the opening of the vagina and the urethra. The point where the vulvar vestibule meets the labia minora is called the lion's heart. Apparently, the tissue in the vulvar vestibules has been found to have unique properties when compared to neighbouring organs in terms of how it responds to hormone stimuli and inflammation and the way in which it's supplied with nerves. The Bartholin's glands, also known as the greater vestibule glands, are 2 pea-sized glands located slightly lateral and posterior to the vaginal opening. These 2 glands function to secrete a mucus-like substance into the vagina and within the borders of the labia minora. This mucus functions as a lubricant to decrease friction during intercourse and acts as a moisturizer for the vulva. These glands can develop cysts or abscesses though. When a cyst becomes infected, it can range from minor discomfort to severe pain and swelling. Typically, you'll feel this when you're sitting, walking, or having intercourse. This is actually more common in women over the age of 40. Awesome. Something else to look forward to, ladies. The Skene's glands are two glands located on either side of the urethra. These glands are believed to secrete a substance to lubricate the urethral opening and act as an antimicrobial used to prevent urinary tract infections. However, the function of the Skene's glands is not fully understood. It is considered potentially to be the source of female ejaculation during sexual arousal. And we have the urethra. It is an extension of a tube from the bladder to the outside of the body. The purpose of the urethra is for the excretion of urine. This is where a catheter would be inserted if you've ever had one. And I would suggest don't put anything up this hole. And let's move inside. We have the vaginal opening. Blood, babies, penises all move through here. It is the highway to everything else in our reproductive system. And what the F is up with that design? Who decided a baby's head should move through here? Upwards from the vagina, we have the cervix, which connects the vagina to the uterus. It's a small hole, again, small, baby's head, and it allows menstrual blood, sperm, and a baby to pass through. It does dilate during childbirth, but probably I don't think it does enough. Really, I mean, kangaroos do have a much better system going on here. Next up from the cervix is the uterus. Typically, it's about the size of a clenched fist, probably a man's clenched fist since we're still comparing female bodies to theirs. It's also where babies grow when pregnant and expands to up to 500 times its volume when we are pregnant. Now, this is where things get interesting and how these organs work together. The vagina expands through arousal and stimulation, and the uterus and the cervix tilt upwards, elongating the vagina. This is something referred to as tenting, which I'm pretty sure is another term created by men because I can't imagine pitching a tent in my vagina. Moving up, on either side of the cervix, we have two muscular tubes called the fallopian tubes. Inside the fallopian tubes are delicate hair-like structures called cilia, which help eggs move from the ovaries towards the uterus. These tubes are also the site where sperm fertilizes the egg, and then they help transport the fertilized egg towards the uterus. At the ovary end of the fallopian tube, there are finger-like projections called fimbria, which help catch and release eggs from the ovaries. These tiny little hairs help to propel the egg or the embryo towards the uterus. And fun fact here, ladies, it's not the fastest, fittest, or strongest sperm that gets to the egg first. Research in 2020 revealed that our eggs are actually picky bitches. They release chemicals called chemical attractants, specific signals that draw in her preferred sperm. Not just anyone gets in. And for the others, she slows them down with a repelling signal. Yep, she's swiping left mid-race. But it's not just the egg doing all the work. Our other lady bits play a crucial role in the selection process too. Like our girlfriends when they wingmaned for us at the clubs in the 90s and the early 2000s, the cervical mucus, especially the L mucus, acts as a quality control system, filtering out weak or low-grade sperm before they even get a chance to line up at the starting line. Once she's chosen her lucky winner, she shuts that race down faster than a perimenopausal woman shuts down her husband in the bedroom. And then, ladies, she sends out a chemical that causes every other sperm's head to literally pop off. Brutal. Essentially, she's a mass murderer. The egg has spoken. Maybe we should take a page out of her book. She seems to have it sorted. And I digress. Moving through to either side of the fallopian tube, we have the ovaries, which are the primary reproductive organs. They're about the size and shape of an almond. The ovaries house all of our eggs, approximately 1 to 2 million, when we are born. They produce hormones such as estrogen, specifically estradiol, testosterone, and progesterone. It's pretty incredible that these tiny little organs are such a powerhouse. And when they decide to close up shop, don't we freaking know about it? If you have listened to the Hormone Podcast, you will understand why you don't want to be without one or both of them any earlier than you have to be. And ladies, that is your vagina, your vulva, your reproductive system, your genital-urinary system. And the list of ailments we can expect from these are expansive, from endometriosis to PMDD to polycystic ovaries to UTIs to bacterial vaginosis, ovarian cancer to thrush, and many, many more. And from the ages of say 10 to 12 to 45 to 48, we are navigating our lady gardens with no real training in horticulture. Even the most experienced and wise lady garden owners will still get it wrong. And potentially, so will the medical field. And then bam, when you think you have it all freaking worked out, some of us actually do get pregnant. And for those of us who have birthed a child, what the fuck is up with that? This makes me think if God does exist, he is definitely a man, because that is poor design, poor engineering right there, poor hip to. This makes me think if God does exist, he's definitely a man. That's poor engineering right there. Poor design, poor head to hip ratio. I mean, why the frick do we do that more than once is beyond me. Hormones. They make you forget how truly unfathomable childbirth really is. Those freaking ovaries. They have been betraying our minds and our pelvises for years. And I'm going to tell you a little birth story from the birth of my second child. And personally, I opted for an epidural pretty quickly. I was hooked up to the induction strip, feeling great in that fabulous pregnancy bliss that we have. And to the utter shock of my husband, I told the anaesthetist, well, you know what? I think I need to feel a contraction before I get the epidural. You know, something doesn't feel quite right. I need to experience it all over again. And bear in mind, when you're induced, it goes from 0 to 1,000 in seconds. It's like your contractions have nowhere to go. And I had had that joy and delight of experiencing that before. So clearly, my mind and my body had chosen to forget the pain of previous events. Freaking ovaries. But not for long. As I bid farewell to my anaesthetist, happily, a blissful world of love and connection, the first contraction came. And all those freaking memories came flooding back. I remembered now, and I remembered them very, very freaking well. I took my husband's hand. I looked him in the eye, and you get that freaking anaesthetist back in here right now. Much to my relief, he was back with him in the room within moments. My husband in that moment was a freaking god. I said to the anaesthetist, how on earth did you get here so quickly? His response was, I was waiting at the door. It clearly wasn't his first rodeo. And bless him, right there in that moment, I was more than happy that he had underestimated my pain tolerance. Or maybe he'd estimated it pretty correctly. But I was 100% okay with that either way. And then there's the birth. We can be cut, ripped, torn, shredded, mutilated, stitched, you name it. It has 100% happened. And for some of us, we have had all of it happen. And that normal that we knew before becomes a completely different freaking normal. And ladies, what we think might be our new normal may also be something that really shouldn't be. Like wetting our pants every time we take a step or jumping on the trampoline. Not normal, nor do we have to live like that. Or having horrendously heavy periods for months and months after childbirth. Not normal. Heart palpitations and excessive energy. Anyone heard of postpartum thyroiditis? No, not normal. The constant feeling of UTIs, heaviness in the pelvis, achy legs before your periods. Have we heard of pelvic congestive syndrome? Not normal. So other women may have experienced these symptoms too, but it doesn't make it normal, nor does it make it something that we have to live with. Yet, as women, we are continuously told that our ailments are normal. But if something is making our life painful, uncomfortable, or difficult in any way, it's not normal, and it doesn't have to be tolerated. Who here has been told, oh, you pee a little when you sneeze? That's okay, darling. It's normal. But did you know that new normal left untreated can turn into urinary and fecal incontinence post-menopause after our estrogen bids us farewell? 1 in 3 women will experience urinary incontinence. 1 in 3. And 1 in 7 will experience fecal incontinence post-menopause. So let's definitely have a conversation about that in future podcasts. So what can we expect from our lady gardens as they age? It will blow you away. It's not just our faces that start to move south. Bid farewell to your lady gardens too. But that's for another episode, ladies. Lady gardens, skincare, maintenance, exercise, and the disappearing act of our vulvas. Be sure to tune into that one in a couple of weeks. But before we sign off on another week of Lady Garden Talk, let's briefly chat about the myth that is the hymen and why I haven't included it in the initial anatomy. This is because I feel it's an outdated bullshit story that was fed to us for years. Yes, it is an initial part of our anatomy, but for many girls, it becomes non-existent by the time we are teenagers. Yet it's something that men decided was an important part of the female anatomy, as it was linked to our purity. Once again, we are receiving judgment about our vaginas from men. The hymen is a remnant tissue partially covering the vaginal opening, a membrane that's left over from how the vagina forms during the embryonic development. It can have a few different positions around your vaginal opening and comes in many shapes and sizes. For some, there's practically no tissue there at all, and for others, it's a membrane covering the vaginal opening and can lead to the need for surgical intervention. Now get this, ladies, my jaw is actually on the freaking ground right now. So clearing up once again the inadequacies of my female anatomy education, the hymen is considered part of the external genitalia, specifically within the vulva, and is located at the entrance of the vagina. It's not internal. My mind has been blown. Put your hands up if you thought it was internal. It's just a little bit of stretchy skin that's part of the vaginal opening, like the actual opening where you insert tampons. It's on the outside. It's external, ladies. Literally, my mind is freaking blowing up right now. Now, the most common myth about the hymen is that it remains intact until it is broken during vaginal penetration. Maybe Freud had something to do with that, which renders it a physical marker of virginity. Though there are many instances where women do experience a small amount of bleeding from hymenal tearing during their first intercourse experience, but this is by no means a universal experience, as there are many women who have very little tissue there in the first place. Another common myth is the hymen is rigid and penetrable. The tissue is actually stretchy and flexible, which means it doesn't necessarily tear when penetrated. In many cases, some tearing or stretching occurs over time from tampons, gynecological exams, or vigorous exercise. Now, I rode horses when I was younger, and I was always told that I was likely to have broken my hymen, being an equestrian. But why was this even being talked about? Why was it felt necessary to inform me about my hymen in the first place? Go figure. But because of these factors, it's impossible to tell by examining a woman if she's a virgin. The idea that virginity can be measured or verified is perhaps the most harmful and damaging myth. Assuming a woman's sexual behavior can be inferred from her appearance is demeaning, and cultures that suggest the use of a hymenal exam to test for virginity invite incorrect and unfair judgment about women. Have a think about the education you received when you were young about your hymen. I bet you knew about it. Yet, did you know what the frickin' vulva was? Interesting, right? Considering a majority of us in our teenage years don't have a hymen anymore, yet we all still had a vulva? And that, my lady gardens, is your vagina, your vulva, your genital urinary system. It's not just your vagina. There you go, ladies. There is your lesson in vaginas. I am so glad that we got to spend 35 minutes educating ourselves on what the frick she actually is. Now, I cannot wait to bring you next week's episode. Are you feeling like you're constantly fulfilling everyone else's needs? Feeling like everyone wants something from us? Constantly giving empathy and touch? Are we neurodivergent mums? Because this can be even more overwhelming. My beautiful lady gardens, be sure to keep next week's episode on your vaginal radar. Just don't freaking touch me. It is an epic conversation with the amazing, the brilliant, the incredibly talented Peter Romeo, the host of the Ecology of Intimacy podcast. Peter is a certified somatic sex, love, and relationship coach with a background in sexology. Her work blends the latest science with the ancient wisdom and traditions of Tantra and Taoism as they relate to spiritual and sexual liberation. Peter also is the founder of Pilates. Yep, Pilates for your vag. Until next time, water those lady gardens because they are worth it. And remember, knowledge is power, power is wisdom, and a wise vagina is an informed vagina. Please note that this podcast is for entertainment purposes and informational purposes only. The content shared is not intended as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider for any medical concerns or before making any health-related decisions. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and guests, and it does not represent those of any medical organisation or institution.